Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the second little mini interlude episode I'm calling NARP Reflects, where I just kind of go through some things about the decks that I've just finished playing and kind of learning. So, keeping in mind the whole point of this series is for me to get better at understanding these decks. Hopefully, other new players might be able to learn some things from watching my mistakes. And maybe veteran players will be kind enough to offer some advice as they see some of the mistakes that are getting made. And these are the two decks that I played in the second half of the OCS for February. So the Quimmuning deck and the TTO deck. Again, all the decks that I'm kind of trying to learn are from the Outrider Cup, so I figured that was a good basis to pull competitive deck lists from. So for these breakdowns, I just kind of go through some things I liked, some things I didn't like, what I learned, and that sort of thing. So and obviously these are not my deck lists, but they are made by some of the best players in the world, or the best players in the world. So while there are things that I might not understand and question, that is not because I think that is a bad decision. It's because I don't understand why the decision is. So if you hear me questioning things and you know the answer, please leave it in the comments there as well. So essentially, if you are newer and not familiar, Quimmuning is one of 3 decks built around this epic event from set 16, where essentially you are playing with one of the Force Ghosts of either Qui-Gon, Yoda, or Obi-Wan guiding you. And so your starting setup will be one of the locations connected with one of the Force Ghosts, and then each of them will have a unique power, and then the commuting objective will get you extra activation for every Jedi, and it will let you peek at the top cards of your Force or Lost and move them around a little bit. The Obi-Wan, or the Qui-Gon power specifically, is that he can put a card from his hand onto the use pile to draw the top card of his Force pile. So we'll talk about that a little bit later, but essentially this is a mains deck. And mains decks were never something that I was good at playing, because when I used to play back in the day, I was a teenager, so I didn't have a ton of money, and so I was playing decks that were built on a budget, and so I never played the kind of mains and toys main archetype. And if you watch the previous videos playing Hitco, you can see a bunch of the mistakes that were made there. And so I guess that leads me to the thing that I didn't like about playing this deck. It felt like the character count was low, and I guess looking at it here, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, or that's not, can't count that, 10, 11, 12, 13. I guess 13 is not too low for an average deck. But one of them is BB-8, he's more utility. Bargwin's also more utility. And so then it makes it more like 11. So what I really struggled with was sticking on sites or attacking multiple sites on the ground. And so that's something that I found difficult to play with the deck, so something I've got to probably learn and get better at. Things that I enjoyed, I really did enjoy this lost pile manipulation aspect, especially and with the way that it comboed nicely with the retrieval from the Bargwins, so that you could set up your lost pile in a way that you were just getting a ton of value out of the Bargwins. And while I sucked at that, if you watch the games, I can see the potential. So that's a really cool concept and cool idea there. just a nice way to get back key cards. Another thing I did enjoy was I did enjoy playing the idea of the mains and toys with the sabers. It is really fun to drop a mace, slap his saber on him, and just start chopping people up, or that sort of thing. So as much as I don't like the idea of lightsabers from a game perspective, it feels like they're a little bit too strong. They are still very fun to play with, and it does feel very Star Wars. So I enjoyed that. Something that I learned specifically about this deck, it was kind of about timing, and so Bargwin and the Quimmuning action are both top level actions, and so each player gets to alternate taking top level actions, so you cannot both Quimmuning to place a device on top and Bargwin that device back retrieved without your opponent having the opportunity to do something. So in the control phase, you have to be careful when you try to use the Quimmuning to set up the Bargwin, because what happened in my game was, in between those two actions, my opponent drained me again. And so the work that I had done setting that up was all for naught. So yeah, just a careful something to be careful with if you're playing the deck, or playing a deck with Bargwin and some sort of manipulation, to make sure that you are doing it during a time when you are not going to lose cards at all from the opponent. Something that I learned just in general was about this card, and this card is pretty bananas. So deploy on Luke or Obi, characters present armed with a unique lightsaber weapon may not be disarmed. Once per battle may cancel a weapon destiny just drawn, and that's lightsaber's force drain modifiers may not be cancelled. What I did not realize is this once per battle clause is attached to your character's present armed with a lightsaber may. So it's three things that they may. They may not be disarmed, they may once per battle cancel, and lightsaber's force drain. So all three of these things apply to your character's plural present armed with a unique lightsaber. So if you have a stack of characters and two of them have lightsabers, you can cancel two weapon destinies in one battle, and that just seems, like insurmountable, like for some decks that are built around weapon destinies. So very strong card. I thought it was good. I think this makes it very, very good, at least for these type of decks that kind of want to stack up in battle. So that was cool to learn. Areas to improve. Oh, so many for this deck. I know there's tons of mistakes in these videos, so go through, look at the Quimmuning, leave some comments of where I'm making errors. I'm sure they're all over the place. One is using Nabrin for sure. I feel like because of the smaller character count, I need to be able to leverage this a little bit better and build a big stack of guys and go drop them somewhere. Using Bargwins properly, I talked about that already. I messed that up a bit. And the one thing that really shows in this playing this deck is I am bad at tracking destinies. And so trying to track cards through to take a card out of my force pile that I really need, this deck makes it super easy to do that, to get the cards that you need, because during your activation you can just, now I'm going to put a card from my hand and draw this card that I've tracked around. I think I successfully did that once in my games, so a skilled player could every turn probably be taking and reusing a good card. So that is something that I will try to get better at as well. Looking at TTO, a couple of things that I really enjoyed about this deck. I love how straightforward it was, and it had a plan, and it stuck to that plan, and it executed that plan, and it pulled everything it needed for that plan. There's so many cards that pull. So you start with Jared Gerard, Death Star, and your effect, and your whole goal is to get this out on the table, which starts pinging them for 2, maybe plus an extra if you are occupying a Naboo site or a different site. And then you have these 2 systems that each drain for 2, and you have kind of space to control that. So that's the game plan. Drain for 2, ping for 2, essentially. Maybe ping for 3 if this is out. But yeah, in order to get there, you have this, which can pull the Endor Shield, which can pull your Admirals, and your Jared Gerard is pulling these locations out. And you have pulled your Death Star out, and then once you get this location, you can pull the TTO out, and your wherever it is, the combat readiness will let you pull the matching pilot. So just everything that you need gets pulled, which is nice for a newer player to just have this really structured approach. And I think on one of the more recent Kendall casts or the interviews, I'm not sure if the interviews have a different name, but he was interviewing Matt, I believe his name was, and they were talking about what types of decks do they enjoy learning with, and it was kind of these were the 2 archetypes, right? The very reactive, I'm not going to make a plan, but I'm going to build my hand and wait and then jump on you, versus this is what I'm going to try and do every game, and maybe I'm going to grind out my victory condition, or maybe you will have an answer. And so I think of the 2, I definitely find this style of very specific game plan, not a lot of different lines of play, decks easier to pilot. I'm sure in the hands of an accomplished player, these style of decks are going to provide more lines of play and going to be more flexible and maybe more enjoyable overall. But for learning, I really enjoyed playing with TTO. As far as what I didn't enjoy, I can't really say that there was something I didn't enjoy, but I guess I did have a question about the deck, and now I can't see. Oh, this isn't the right list I pulled up. I saved over Timo's lists. Oh my goodness. See, I was tinkering. I was already making it worse, making some changes. But in the original it had Maul, and I was like, I don't understand why Maul is in this. Why is Maul that important? There's not too many low destiny characters floating around, so I guess the low destiny doesn't hurt that much. But I just didn't see the role that Maul was playing. So if you know kind of the role Maul plays in this deck, then let me know. And you can look up Timo's actual list on the forums, since I have massacred it with my inferior adjustments. Well, one was an adjustment. I pulled out a card that I had listened to an interview that the card didn't work as intended in the games. It was an error in GIMP or something. So that was the impetus for one change. I think it was the little first order droid, and I swapped it for a Probot. Then I thought, I got a Probot. I want Afra. I love Afra. Let's put another droid in. Guri will help my space, and put a Stinger. So, whatever. Anyway, now that I've went and made it worse, you can go find the original version. The other thing I enjoyed was that it was a space deck. I generally prefer space decks to ground decks just because I love the fantasy of the starfighter battle, especially the matching pilots. This combat readiness and squadron assignments are, I think, 2 of my favorite cards, and I love, even though it's not very card efficient, pulling the match of pilots out this idea of dogfighting, and the Rogue Squadron novels were some of my favorite novels, and so I really enjoy this style of decks. What did I learn about this deck? I learned that the Death Star is quite vulnerable in the early game, so the +3 drain until you get set up means you really are going to have to focus on defending it if they do come to Endor and move over, or if they do happen to have a Tantive, that can be bad. And one thing I learned in general the hard way is that I really need to be focusing on what does my opponent's deck do, not just what does my own deck do. So with this deck especially, it's very easy to just try and execute your game plan without too much variation, and so that resulted in me dropping a Gergerod by himself down to the bunker thinking he was safe against a no idea deck, when if I had stopped and thought about it for a second, I would realize, oh, their deck is full of spies. And so I should have played a little bit slower, built up a little bit more presence so that I could protect him. But yeah, that's good to think about in every case, and once I get more familiar with the decks, I think that's the next step, is thinking more about my opponent's game plan. As far as areas for improvement, I guess with playing this deck, there wasn't really many that I could think of off the top of my head. It's a fairly straightforward deck. Probably some of my decisions as far as playing the game were maybe less than ideal, but I think as far as how to pilot the deck specifically, I feel like I was doing okay. If you see something in the videos of TTO, please drop me a comment. Alright, and until next time, I hope that all your destinies come up as you wish they would. It'd be great if every card was a 0 or 7. You could just have your nice pick. Unless you're playing hidden weapons, then you want that 2 or 3. Alright, until next time, take care.